Hello everyone, welcome back to Reflection with Reach. This is the third episode in which I'll be answering questions from viewers. But before I get into the questions, a quick channel update. You may have noticed that I haven't posted a War Thunder Vehicles and Their Variants video for some time now, about a week. The last one being the TBF Avenger. The fact is, I've become a little bit burnt out with those videos. It was very exciting to make them to begin with, but after a while all the research required and the filming of the gameplay and the creating of the script and the compiling of the required information, it did eventually start to get a little bit boring. But rest assured, I'm not finished with that series. I will endeavour to, if not make a video for every single plane and tank, at least as many as possible. I've currently got the F6F Hellcat in the works. That's very close to finishing. That's about 95% done. I've got the footage, I've recorded the voiceover. All I have to do now is match the length of the footage with the length of the voiceover. And a few touch-ups here and there, but the F6F video will be out, if not today, then tomorrow. I've also been uploading a wide range of videos as well. Some of them quite sad, some of them are quite funny. Hopefully. The Fubar videos were quite successful. I'm glad those have been quite well received. Fubar is basically a sketch show in War Thunder. I'm taking scenes, well-known scenes from movies and television shows, or I'm creating my own sketches, and basically using War Thunder as a medium through which I'm creating comedy. So if you enjoy Fubar, let me know. I'll continue to make them. I have had some positive responses in the comment section. So next episode of Fubar will be out. Can't say when exactly. Probably within the next few days. It takes quite a lot of work to make them because, as you saw in the video, I had to splice together footage from the Italian job with footage from in-game. So I had to go backwards and forwards, and I had to have two separate copies of the sound. I needed the footage from Italian job, and I needed just the audio from those scenes for the moments when I had War Thunder showing. So it was quite confusing. It took quite a lot of work, but I was pleased with the finished product. It turned out quite well. But obviously, if you haven't seen the Italian job or you haven't heard of it, you probably won't enjoy that quite as much. But I suppose that's the price I have to pay for making a reference like that. Every time you make a reference, it kind of relies on the audience knowing what you're talking about. I'm not saying you're obliged to know about what the Italian job, by the way. It's my problem, not yours, to make references that as many people as possible will get. But sometimes I just make things because I like them. I'm sorry. Yeah, the next Vehicles and Their Variants video will be the F6F Hellcat, sorry. Because as you may have noticed, I'm going through all the Grumman aircraft, which means after the F6F will be the Bearcat. And after the Bearcat will be the F9F Panther. Unfortunately, I don't have either of the Panthers unlocked, so unless I record footage from someone else, unless someone donates footage on the forums or something like that, or if that doesn't happen, I'll either have to use, I'll have to use just the in-game hangar view. That's all I'll have. And some historical footage. I've got some historical clips, some very interesting ones of Panthers taking off from carriers, and some actual gun camera footage of Panthers shooting down MiG-15s. That's very interesting. So that's the end of the channel information. On to the questions. First of all, EbonHawk asks, have you played World of Tanks, and what's my opinion of it? I'm glad someone brought this up. I've been meaning to mention World of Tanks, because it's sort of the elephant in the room with my channel. War Thunder and World of Tanks, while they play differently, they're very similar in concept. They are World War II MMOs, free to play, with lots of armoured vehicles. So it was going to come up sooner or later, and I'm glad it did, because I'd like to talk about it. I used to be a huge fan of World of Tanks. First time I played World of Tanks was May 2010, I believe. So I can't remember if it was in closed beta or not. I think that was just when it went open beta. I enjoyed it, but my computer wasn't very good. I had a Dell Dimension 5000 with some crappy graphics card. I think it had 512 megabytes of video RAM, and I had 1 gig of memory. So I couldn't really run it. I could put the graphics down, but even then, the map loading time would be 5 minutes or more, and by the time the map had loaded, the game was basically over, so I gave up. I uninstalled it after a couple of days because I couldn't play it. The loading times were so long that the game would be finished before I loaded, so I had to give up. But the next year I got a PC upgrade, July 2011, but by then I'd forgotten about World of Tanks, so I wasn't playing it anymore. But eventually, I think October 2011, sorry, a friend of mine, eccentric Greek, who is Greek by the way, a friend of mine, eccentric Greek, got me back into it. This was just when I started A-levels, 6th form, literally the second month in, and I'd met Dimitri, and we got talking about video games, as young men do, and he mentioned World of Tanks, and I said, yeah, that sounds familiar, I think I've played that. So I reinstalled it, and I enjoyed it. It was a lot of fun. It's not a serious game, of course. If you've played World of Tanks, you'll know what I mean. It doesn't get much less realistic than World of Tanks, but they do have some realistic elements like angling of armor and ballistics and so on. Although they don't have shell drop. You just fire the gun and it sort of goes off in a random direction like a shotgun. But you know, what can you do? I really loved World of Tanks for a long time. I was grinding and grinding and grinding. And I think by the following year, I made it to the King Tiger. I started off with the Germans, because, you know, German tanks, cool. I made it to the King Tiger. Following year, I can't remember if it was last summer or the summer before that, I got to the E75. And then I started grinding the Russians, and I got to the ISU 152, the derp gun, well, not really derp gun, but, you know, it does derp damage. The BL-10 is a lot of fun, but after a while I started to get really bored of it. This wasn't anything to do with War Thunder. This was before I started playing War Thunder. I stopped playing World of Tanks before I started playing War Thunder. The two aren't really linked for me. After a while I just got fed up with it. The game wasn't fun anymore. I started, when I referred to it on the forums, I put game in sort of, you know, apostrophes, because games are supposed to be fun, and World of Tanks wasn't fun for me. The point I was making was the victories don't really feel like victories. They're just sort of, oh, I won, that's nice. But every time I lost the game, it was really frustrating, really annoying, and I wasn't enjoying it. It was a clunky game. The graphics were a little bit lackluster. The gameplay, it was not to my liking, shall we say. Those tanks could have been replaced by anything. You could have taken out the 3D models of tanks and put in spaceships. It would still play the same. The point is, you didn't feel like you were driving an armoured vehicle. It sort of felt like a go-kart. A bit slower or a bit faster, depending on how big the tank was. You didn't feel like you were in control of a huge, heavy beast, like you do in War Thunder. It just felt clunky. It was too arcadey for my liking. It entertained me for a year. I enjoyed it while I did, but after a while I became disillusioned, and I realised that it wasn't a very good game, in my opinion. Don't get me wrong. If you like World of Tanks, that's fine. I can understand why you'd think that. I thought that for a long time, but eventually I just had enough. That was just personal preference. World of Tanks is no longer a game that I play. I have an account. I spent quite a lot of money on that account, which is the only reason I'm unwilling to uninstall it. I'm grinding the E100 very, very, very slowly because I only play once every 2 months, perhaps even less than that. In the last 6 months, I've only played less than half a dozen games, 5 or 6 games, if that, maybe 2 or 3. But as time goes on, I play it less and less and less and less. You may have seen Jingles recently had to have a break from World of Tanks because he was on a losing streak. And then he came back to it and he felt refreshed and he was ready to start again. I've tried that. I've had a break for nearly 2 years now. Well, not quite 2 years. Over a year. I've been on a break for over a year, and I just can't get back into it. I open the game up again, I play a game or two, and I'm bored again, and I'm just not engaged. It's not something I play. It's not something I find enjoyable anymore, so I stop playing it. So unfortunately, if you're looking for World of Tanks content on this channel, I'm not going to be providing any anytime soon because it's just not a game I can play. I've expended my enjoyment of that game, so sorry guys if you like World of Tanks, but there are plenty of channels that provide good World of Tanks content, like Jingles of course. So thank you for the question, EbonHawk. To summarise, yes, I have played World of Tanks. I've played it for quite some time. I don't like it anymore. I've got bored of it essentially. So thank you. Damian McCain asks, what would the gameplay impact of the Lancaster carrying the Tallboy and or the Grandslam, and how would I use them? This is an interesting question. I can't remember if War Thunder Gaijin have confirmed that the Lancaster will get these bombs. I think they might have said they will. I can't remember, I'm afraid. Maybe someone in the comments can confirm or deny that. But that would be very interesting. It would be a lot of fun, of course, carrying these huge bombs. A bit of background, of course, in case you didn't know what they are. The Tallboy and the Grandslam were brainchilds of Barnes Wallis, a fairly famous British inventor who came up with loads of war ideas, some very interesting ones. Some of them didn't really work very well, but some of them were brilliant. But he came up with this 10-ton earthquake bomb idea that would penetrate the ground, and the shockwaves created would do damage for hundreds and hundreds of meters around. But the 10-ton bomb couldn't be produced in its full size because no aircraft was powerful enough to carry it. Although Barnes Wallis did design a huge 6-engined heavy bomber designed to carry this bomb, but the RAF didn't want to design a bomber just to carry one bomb. That's a very niche project, you know, designing this huge, complex, expensive aircraft just to carry one bomb. It wasn't really practical. So they had to scale down the bomb to fit it on the bombers they could use. So the first design they created was the Tallboy. This was a 12,000 pounder. Now even that was gigantic. I think it was just under 5 tons. 12,000 pounds, or around 5,000 kilos. Beast of a weapon. The Lancaster, as Damian McCain mentions in the comments, had to be modified. They removed the dorsal turret and the nose turret to reduce weight and to streamline the profile to reduce wind resistance. And the engines were slightly increased in power as well, just to, you know, lug along this 12,000 pound weight. The bomb bay doors had to be bulged out slightly to actually allow it to fit in. But the Lancaster successfully carried a Tallboy. It was in service from June the 8th, 1944, just after D-Day, so it was used in France until the end of the war. And it was very successful as an explosive weapon. The penetration was immense. They could penetrate submarine pens that had concrete meters thick. It would go straight through and explode inside and ruin the day of the Germans who were underneath it. But it did the job. Obviously the accuracy was sometimes a little lackluster because this is 1940s we're talking about. They didn't have complex bomb aiming technology, and they're only dropping a single bomb, so the capacity to hit a target was much more difficult than a saturation rate like with 1,000 B-17s dropping 16 bombs each. But when it did hit quite often. Not necessarily pinpoint accuracy, but the Grandslam and the Tallboy didn't have to hit right on target. That was the point of the earthquake bomb. The shockwaves underground would travel across and shake the target to bits, whether it was a factory or a bridge or a bunker or anything like that. So the Tallboy was superseded by the Grandslam. This was a 22,000 pound bomb, 10,000 kilos, gigantic thing. Now this couldn't fit inside the Lancaster bomb bay at all, so they had to fare over the bomb bay doors and attach the Grandslam to the outside. It's 10,000 kilo bomb, and this was used from March 45 onwards, so it didn't see a great deal of use, but when it was used it was devastating. This was basically like an enlarged version of the Tallboy. It was much closer to the original brainchild of the earthquake bomb that Barnes Wallis had in mind, and devastating. But the gameplay impact of these weapons. I would speculate that the developers would have to add a new version of the Lancaster, because the current variant we had in game doesn't have the capacity to carry these bombs. It could carry the weight of it, but it had to be modified to actually fit it in the bomb bay, otherwise it wouldn't work. So there was a special version of the Lancaster. I believe it's called the Lancaster 1B. So I suppose if Gaijin added that, they could add it just for the bombs, because it's a different version of the plane that we have now, so they'd have to add a new plane. But the gameplay impact would be, well, it's obvious really, in arcade particularly, where you have to destroy those 3 bases and then the airfield. They'd have to balance it, of course, because the Tallboy, let alone the Grandslam, could destroy one of those bases in 1 hit. They'd have to balance it by either having to make the player wait a long time for the bomb to come back, or making the bomb not come back at all, even in arcade. The pilot would have to go back to base and land and rearm to get another bomb. That would help with the Grandslam balancing, because a 22,000-pound bomb could probably destroy the airfield in 1 hit. It certainly would in real life, because the crater would be probably as wide as the runway. So they'd have to be very careful with the balancing. Of course, the Lancaster would become almost defenseless. It would only have 1 turret, the rear turret. The Lancaster is almost defenseless anyway, because those tiny rifle caliber MGs really don't do very much damage, unless the enemy is really close and you can pepper them with all 4 in the back. But it would be almost defenseless, and it would be very slow with this huge weight and the wind resistance created by the bulged out bomb doors or the actual bomb underneath. So in realistic battles I could imagine some very shaky takeoffs where players just manage to get off the ground, because the airfields are very small in realistic battles, which is kind of annoying, but what can you do? So yeah, I think the effect on gameplay could be manageable, but Gaijin would have to give it some thought before diving in and putting these bombs in. I'd personally like to see them, it would be a lot of fun, but even though I'm a long way from getting the Lancaster. I'm only on the 3rd Wellington at the moment, so it would be a long time before I got to use them. Finally, a question a few people have asked: what is the song in the intro? I can understand why people want to know, because this song doesn't appear anywhere. It's not made by an official recording company or anything. It does have a sort of Vietnam feel to it, like a 60s, 70s feel, which is quite appropriate because it's the main theme of a game called Men of War Vietnam, which is a very good game, very difficult. Possibly the most difficult game I've ever played. But it's a brilliant game, I recommend it. The song is called Well I Woke Up One Morning. But you can't actually find it under that name anywhere. Well, you can, but you have to do a lot of searching. But if you search Men of War Vietnam theme on YouTube, you'll find it. It's a great song. It's a sort of, cross between Creedence Clearwater Revival and the Rolling Stones. It was created by, I think either a Ukrainian or a Russian music publisher, developer. It was a private project by like one man. I think he did a fantastic job. It's a great song. I'm sure many of you appreciate that song because it sounds really good. Even though it's only 17 seconds at the intro, you get the feel of it. That sort of Vietnam theme. And I love Vietnam era rock music. So, well, this video has dragged on quite a while. This is going to take a long time to upload. 19 minutes. Once again, feel free to ask me more questions for the next video of Reflection with Reach. Thank you very much for watching. This has been Reach for the Sky. See you soon, guys.